pending and try to resolve the issue before we'd actually go ahead and reject a trade.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I mean, I really have 2 points to make about this. I mean, the first is, why would a clearinghouse reject a trade, or why could this uncertainty exist? I mean, really, the clearinghouse, it's there in the marketplace. It's a repository of risk, and so if a trade comes in and you haven't calculated the amount of risk associated with it, or there's not a clearing member who's willing to put themselves on the hook and say, yes, that's my client, that's my trade, I'm going to backstop that trade. That's really the scenario. The other things, if there's an operational glitch because somebody accidentally enters a 500-year euro trade, or something, if there's things that just are accidents like that, that's not really what people are worried about. So I think that the scenario that can cause this is if there's a trade where it's complicated to calculate the risk, or there's not a clearing member that quickly or in advance is willing to put itself on the hook for that. And the second point really I'd like to make on that is that it is important. We hear this a lot from our buy side clients and potential clients, from our buy side advisory committee. They definitely say they're very concerned about pre-trade certainty of clearing, and I really think it's something that we as an industry need to work on and solve. And I think components of whatever the solution turn out to be, part of it's at the CCP, part of it's at the clearing member, maybe part of it's at the CEF, maybe part of it's at the executing broker. But I think it's something that's been identified as an issue, and people are trying to solve, and I think we will get there on that.
Yeah, the only thing I'd mention is that maybe the best model to look at how this evolves is the energy clearing model, which has existed for years. Post-Enron, it kind of really began. And they solved this issue, and they've solved it fairly pragmatically. If you do a swap, it's contingent to clear. If it doesn't clear, it's not a trade. I mean, and they get over it. So there's a lot of uncertainty about what that means in in the fixed income space, but I think we'll get through it.
Yeah, and I agree. And the energy comparison is a much better comparison than even futures, right? And not to, again, a whole nother panel, but arguably looking at the energy market, you don't need an execution mandate that would just grow organically as long as you had clearing in place.
Yep.
Phil.
Let's add from the FCM perspective that the clearinghouse is not going to reject a trade, as Jeff said, directly. It'll go into pending, and then it's up to the member, the clearinghouse, to deal with that trade. So I think from an FCM perspective, if it's broken a limit or there's an issue with the trade, it's really going to be, back what I said earlier, having this credit officer up front, having a conversation with the client to understand, because each FCM is going to go through a fairly robust credit process with the client beforehand, so should really know and understand the business. And then it's really a question of extending credit daily during a single day for a single trade. Some of the scenarios we do expect, if it's a fat finger trade, for some reason it did get through and it blew through a credit limit, then we think the counterparty would want to know about that, and that's a check before it would be cleared on both sides. But really, I think that's from an FCM perspective, that would be really the credit perspective. One thing that I'd prefer to see over time, I think, is pushing that back up to the CEFs and it to be a pre-credit check, because I think otherwise, I think that's the best model from there. So a trade, as I say, you tie execution with clearing approval at the same time. So I think once that chain it gets passed all the way up the chain, then I think that will be the ideal solution for that.
Well, so something we learned recently from talking to the SEC is the way that their rules are written. It makes it look more like you would end up with a sponsored access type model for doing CDS, single name CDS trades, where you would go through a broker and the broker could do those pre-trade risk checks just like they do in equities. Whereas the CFTC rules, say the hedge fund can go straight to the CEF and they don't need to go through a broker at all. The CFTC probably more for the open access. The SEC may be better in that it solves this problem, like you said, right at the front end, and we don't have to deal with it all the way downstream. But the consensus of I said I'm doing this study where I'm out talking to the dealers now, and the quick answer I get is, yeah, we know it's a big deal, we think it's a big deal, but we're not too worried it'll get sorted out. So everybody here will figure it out. So I think we're just about out of time and ready to go into questions. So the last question I'll pose to the panel, other than, of course, calling Calypso and asking them to help you, what are the things you can do now to get prepared, even though we still have so much uncertainty in the rules?
So I mean, For ourselves, from a swap clear LCH perspective, I mean, we feel like in a way we've been preparing for this our whole life. In the sense that we've not me individually, I'm saying, but as an organization, because I mean, SwapClear has been around clearing OTC business and interest rate swaps for more than 10 years globally, for more than 10 years in the U.S. You know, that's primarily been in the bank-to-bank market, but you know, a big part of the preparation has been learning the instruments, understanding the risk characteristics, because ultimately, you know, the clearinghouse's job is to manage the risk of the instrument and manage the safety of the collateral that everybody has put up. So I think a big part of the preparation has just been doing that, and then from really engaging with the members and the clients to learn what they need. You know, obviously we continue to monitor the rules very closely. And then, you know, I think a lot of us in this room are thinking, hey, you know, there are these regulations, there are markets, but also all of us, in a way, are technology companies. We're all technology businesses, and, you know, all the things that we have to do to comply and to connect with everybody else, you know, it's technology. So you have to invest in the technology, build it, you know, test it, make sure it works, make sure you've got the right things in place. And then there's a lot of operational things to do. So kind of going back to what I said before about, you know, you're in school and you've got this big project and you've gotten these extensions. So, you know, we don't have to do anything overnight, but there really are systems and operations and people and a lot of things we need to make sure we can do to get ready. And I think for all of us, that's, to my mind, the most important thing.
But you do want to graduate eventually.
Soon.
I mean, I think from a you know, client perspective, obviously legal documentation is going to take time to negotiate. That's obviously one key things. But what we've really seen evolve is a lot of people initially were just saying, okay, look at this hypothetical portfolio, or what's the cost of clearing going to be, and what is my initial margin requirement going to be? What we've seen over time now is a lot more people have moved into saying, like I said before, let's simulate what this is going to look like in production. There's a lot of clients out there that have no experience with affirmation platforms, no STP with those platforms, have no idea really how you know, these positional views are going to look relative to their transactional systems today. So until you really kick the tires and say, all right, you know, across clearinghouse, across product, how do I get my statements? How do I reconcile to them? What do they look like today versus what do they look like in the bilateral space? You won't really know what you need to do. And I know some of the, you know, some clients I've worked with, depending on how advanced they got in their integration with the affirmation platform, that could be a 3 to 6 month project right there. So I think while the regulations have, you know, been delayed, I think, you know, people shouldn't wait until December to start doing that work.
It's time to get rid of the fax machine.
Exactly.
I think, you know, as we sort of referred to earlier, there seems to be some uncertainty, but the, you know, two key things that we know are going to happen: there's going to be more electronic trading, there's going to be more clearing. So, you know, if you haven't already done so, then it's certainly worth understanding the options that are available to you in the market today. You know, both Tradeweb, Bloomberg, but there's plenty of others as well, and also obviously your clearing and your clearing broker options as well. I mean, everyone's tripping over themselves to spend time with you, so I'd certainly take advantage of that to understand the options that are available out there. And then, you know, a number of the clients we've worked with, you know, same on Bill's side, have taken it to the next step as well, in that if they haven't electronically executed, they've tried some trades and then even seen an electronic execution flow from the screen all the way through to clearing, you know, the full workflow, if you like. And that way, a number of them have gone back to their senior management and said, okay, you know, essentially we've kicked the tires and we're ready. There might be some tweaks here and there, but we're comfortable that we're positioned should the regulation happen, you know, in the next few months.
Don't forget CreditX. Phil?
I'll add as well. So if you're looking at choosing a clearing broker and seeing, you know, how it's going to play out, then I think if you think through the operational side of this, so something, you know, we've thought through and we've had a lot of questions over is, you know, when you start to clear and you have a set of your trades on your books, and then you're going to get your reports back from your clearing broker, which are going to show positions, then, you know, how reconciliations are going to work. So think of all the extra work that you're going to have, you know, the day after you start clearing. So when you consider, netting down trades or compression of trades across clearinghouses, there's not necessarily going to be a one-for-one. So unless you have a large recon department, you need to think about how your clearing broker can help you with things like that. The other kind of considerations, I think, is if as a lot of clients we're talking to are looking to go across multiple clearinghouses and multiple clearing brokers, is how do you expect to bring all that together, right? So right now, if you're you really have kind of one collateral call that you have for each counterparty that you're working with, that suddenly multiplies in, you need to figure out how those collateral calls are going to get, which are now going to be margin calls for each of your clearing brokers. All of that collateral needs to be segregated in different accounts that you have across the different clearing houses. So I think there's a lot of extra work that the client has to consider from there about how to tie everything back and to be able to predict that the day beforehand. So I think that's something that clearing broker should be helping you with and talking to you about today before you kind of pull the trigger on the clearing broker.
So with that, let's open it up for questions. Is there a mic, or just stand up and shout it out? Oh, there it is, yeah. So there's one back there. Oh.
Hi. My question is on initial margin. How do we properly strike a balance between competitiveness and systemic risk reduction, i.e. preventing a race to the bottom but still not bleeding out too much risk back into the financial system?
I assume that's to the clearinghouses? Yeah. So how do you not compete on margin, I think, is that the question?
The balance between that and risk reduction, systemic risk reduction.
Well, we're all well-established clearinghouses. We've been doing risk management on derivative products for some of us for 100 years. These guys are a little younger than I am.
And it shows.
It does. Look how gray I am.